Imagine for a second that you are the CEO of a massive manufacturing giant in the heart of Germany. You make the steel, the chemicals, and the cars that literally built the modern world. For decades, your factory has been the beating heart of Europe, but it's 2023 and you walk onto the factory floor to find something terrifying. It's quiet, too quiet. You aren't shut down because you ran out of customers. Demand is higher than ever. You aren't shut down because of a strike. You are shut down because you literally cannot afford to turn the lights on. Welcome to the Energiewende, Germany's $500 billion green miracle that has officially spiraled into a national nightmare. Imagine spending $500 billion to build a renewable utopia, only to end up with the most expensive electricity on the planet and an economy that's hollowed out from the inside. And here's the kicker, the ultimate irony that nobody's laughing at. They are now tearing down wind farms just to expand coal mines. Yeah, you heard that right. Today, we're dissecting the most expensive unforced error in modern economic history. This isn't just about energy. It's about how a global superpower fell into a trap of its own making. Buckle up. It's going to be a bumpy, expensive ride. If you want to see the real cost of this energy trap, don't look at a utility bill. Look at Ludwigshafen. This is the home of BASF, the largest chemical producer in the world. To give you an idea of the scale here, this one single site consumes as much natural gas as the entire country of Switzerland. For decades, this was the beating heart of German industry, turning cheap energy into the fertilizers, plastics, and medicines that the world lined up to buy. But in 2023, the heart started skipping beats. BASF didn't just complain about high prices. They announced they were permanently downsizing in Europe. They cut thousands of jobs at their flagship plant and shut down their ammonia production. And where are they moving that massive investment? China. BASF is building a $10 billion state-of-the-art complex in Zhanjiang. Why? Because in China, energy is actually affordable, and the government isn't trying to guilt-trip you for running a factory. And they aren't alone. It's a mass exodus. Miele, the company that literally invented the invincible washing machine, is moving production to Poland. Volkswagen is looking at Canada and the US for its next battery plants, chasing subsidies instead of staying in the motherland. Economists like to use polite terms for this, like structural change. But let's call it what it really is, de-industrialization. Germany is an export economy. It doesn't have a Silicon Valley. It has things you can touch. It makes stuff. If you take away the ability to make stuff competitively, what's left? A very expensive museum with good beer? The CEO of BASF didn't mince words. He said, Europe is becoming increasingly uncompetitive. That is CEO speak for, we are leaving before the ship sinks. This isn't just about rich shareholders losing money. This is about the high-paying, middle-class union jobs that hold a society together. When the steel mills close, they don't come back. Germany is literally hollowing itself out to meet carbon targets that the rest of the world is basically ignoring. It's like setting your own house on fire just to show the neighbors how serious you are about fire safety. To understand how Germany actually ended up at the edge of this cliff, we have to travel back to 2010. It feels like a completely different lifetime. Back then, things actually looked pretty good for the German energy grid. At the time, Chancellor Angela Merkel, who, by the way, is a literal physicist with a PhD in quantum chemistry, was making a very sensible move. She extended the lifespan of Germany's nuclear power plants. Germany was sitting pretty. They had a solid, reliable mix of nuclear, coal, and renewables. Nuclear provided about 25% of the country's power. It was clean, it was stable, and it was cheap. The plan was logical. Use nuclear as a steady bridge for a few decades while slowly ramping up wind and solar. But then, on March 11th, 2011, the earth shook in Japan. The Tohoku earthquake triggered a massive tsunami that slammed into the Fukushima Daiichi plant. It was a disaster, a tragedy, no doubt about it. But here's the reality. It happened 5,000 miles away from Germany in a high-risk seismic zone involving a 40-year-old plant design. Germany, for the record, is not exactly known for its massive tsunamis. Logic would dictate a safety review, but politics isn't about logic, it's about emotion. And the German public was terrified. The anti-nuclear movement went into overdrive. So, what did the physicist chancellor do? Did she look at the data? No, she panicked. Or rather, she made a calculated political pivot to save her coalition. Merkel announced the AUTOPSY, the total nuclear phase-out. Germany would shut down all of its reactors by 2022. 8 of them were switched off almost immediately. Click. Gone. This is the original sin. Imagine you live in a house with a reliable furnace. You want to switch to solar panels? Great. But instead of installing the panels first, you take a sledgehammer and smash the furnace in the middle of a freezing winter and say, "Don't worry, the sun will come out eventually." Germany took 17 trusted, paid-off, zero-carbon power plants and decided to throw them in the trash. Building wind turbines to replace working nuclear plants is economic suicide. You aren't adding capacity, you're just spending billions to run in place. Between 2010 and 2020, German electricity prices skyrocketed to nearly 3 times the US average. And here's the kicker. Despite spending hundreds of billions, Germany's carbon emissions barely moved for a decade. Why? Because when the wind didn't blow, they couldn't turn the nuclear plants back on. Instead, they burned lignite coal, the dirtiest fuel on the planet. They killed the cleanest power to save the environment and ended up relying on the sootiest rock in the ground. Now, the German government will look at you with a straight face and say, "But wait, our plan is working. Our emissions are dropping." And technically, they're right. In 2023, Germany's CO2 emissions fell to their lowest level in 70 years. On paper, it looks like a massive win for the planet. But here's the catch. Why did they drop? Was it because of some breakthrough in green technology? Was it the wind turbines or the heat pumps? No, it's because the factories stopped running. Energy-intensive production in Germany fell by nearly 20% in a single year. Hooray! You saved the planet by destroying your economy. This is the equivalent of losing weight by cutting off your own leg. Sure, the scale says you're lighter, but you're also bleeding out on the bathroom floor. The head of Germany's audit office explicitly called this out, stating that Germany isn't on track for a sustainable transition. It's on track for an economic contraction that just masquerades as climate success. And it gets even more absurd. Because Germany killed its nuclear plants, its electricity grid is now significantly dirtier than its neighbor, France. France gets 70% of its power from nuclear, keeping their carbon intensity around 50 grams. Germany, even on a good day, they hover around 300 to 400. The green leader of Europe has become one of its biggest polluters, simply because they refuse to accept that nuclear energy is zero carbon. Okay, so you've killed your nuclear plants. You have wind and solar, but they are intermittent. They don't work when the sun goes down or the wind stops. You need a backup for those dark, windless days Germans call Dunkelflaute. If you want to get off coal, what's the bridge fuel? Natural gas. It burns cleaner, spins up fast, and provides the heavy industrial heat Germany's steel sectors crave. But Germany doesn't have much gas. Enter the dealer, Vladimir Putin. For decades, Germany operated under Wandel durch Handel, change through trade. The idea was naive. If we buy enough gas from Russia, if we entangle our economies, Russia will become a peaceful democracy. We won't go to war with our best customer, right? This led to Nord Stream 1 and 2, massive pipelines under the Baltic Sea designed to pump cheap Siberian gas directly into the veins of German industry. It was a drug, and Germany was the junkie. By 2021, Germany imported 55% of its gas from Russia. Their entire model, BASF, Bayer, Volkswagen, was built on the assumption that cheap Russian gas would flow forever. There were warnings. The Poles warned them. The Ukrainians warned them. The Baltic states screamed that this was a geopolitical trap. They said, "You're handing the Kremlin a kill switch for your economy." And let's not forget 2018. At the UN, Donald Trump said Germany would become totally dependent on Russian energy. The camera cut to the German delegation. They were smirking. They looked at each other like, "Listen to this idiot. He doesn't understand high-level diplomacy." Fast forward to February 2022, Russian tanks roll into Ukraine. The laughter stopped real quick. Suddenly, that sophisticated diplomacy looked like suicidal negligence. When Russia throttled the gas and the pipelines blew up, Germany was caught with its pants down. Gas prices went vertical, increasing by 1,000%. Remember our factory owner? His energy bill went from $1 million a month to $10 million. You can't absorb that. You can't pass that to customers who can just buy steel from China or the US. The government had to scramble, bailing out utility giants with $30 billion and spending hundreds of billions more to prevent literal riots. This is where the trap snaps shut. Germany shut down nuclear, so no backup there. It alienated itself from coal. And then its main supplier of the only fuel it allowed, gas, turned into an enemy of the state. The competitive advantage of made in Germany was secretly subsidized by cheap Russian hydrocarbons. Now that the subsidy is gone, the cracks in the foundation have turned into canyons. The era of cheap German manufacturing didn't just end, it was vaporized. Germany wanted a green revolution, but they built it on a foundation of Siberian sand. By 2023, The German government realized that shutting down nuclear and burning coal wasn't exactly great for their image. They needed a new win. They needed to decarbonize your basement. Enter the Heizungsgesetz, the heating law. The Green Party pushed through a law that effectively banned new oil and gas boilers. The replacement? Heat pumps. Now, don't get me wrong, heat pumps are amazing technology. They are super efficient. But there is a catch. They work best in modern, well-insulated houses. Do you know what most German houses are? Old, drafty, and built with bricks thick enough to stop a tank, but terrible at holding heat. To make a heat pump work in a 1950s German home, you often need to rip up the floors, replace all the radiators, and insulate every wall. The cost? It can easily hit $50,000. The government offered subsidies, but the messaging was a disaster. It felt like a forced expropriation. Grandma, living on a pension, was suddenly told she might need a massive loan just to stay warm. The public reaction wasn't just anger, it was fury. The tabloid Bild called it the heat hammer. Approval ratings fell off a cliff, and the far-right AfD surged in the polls by simply saying, "We won't touch your boiler." It got so bad the government nearly collapsed. They had to water down the law, creating massive loopholes. But the damage was done. The heat pump industry, expecting a boom, saw sales crash because everyone was terrified. People panicked and bought brand new gas boilers before the ban kicked in, locking in fossil fuels for another 20 years. It was a masterclass in how not to do policy. They tried to mandate a transition overnight, ignoring the economic reality of their own citizens. Okay, let's get technical for a minute, because this is where the incompetence truly shines. Germany has a massive geography problem. The wind blows in the north, where the ocean is, but the factories, the BMWs and the Siemens of the world, are in the south. To get that power from point A to point B, you need massive high-voltage transmission lines. The biggest project is called SüdLink. It was supposed to be the main artery of this entire transition, ready by 2022. The reality? It's stuck in bureaucratic hell. Due to endless lawsuits and not-in-my-backyard protests, they had to bury the cables underground. This tripled the cost and delayed everything. Now the completion date is 2028. Maybe. So what happens today when a storm hits the North Sea and the turbines spin like crazy? You have too much power in the north and no way to send it south. The grid gets overloaded. To prevent a total blackout, grid operators tell the wind farms to just turn off. But here's the kicker. The wind farms still get paid. It's called redispatch, or as I call it, ghost electricity. German consumers are paying billions of euros for power that was never even produced. In 2022 alone, this cost hit a record $4.2 billion. Think about that. You're paying wind turbines to sit idle in the north. Meanwhile, because that power can't reach the south, factories in Bavaria have to fire up. You guessed it, coal and gas plants just to keep running. You are paying twice. Once for the green energy you didn't get, and once for the dirty energy you had to use instead. It's a Rube Goldberg machine of pure inefficiency. So, here we are. It's late 2025, and the German model, the one that defined Europe's economic strength for decades, is officially broken. The formula was simple: cheap energy in, high-quality exports out. But today, the energy is no longer cheap, and the exports are looking for the exit door. Germany was the only major G7 economy to shrink recently, and while the rest of the world moves on, the German industry is stagnating. The Green Party is fighting for its political life, and the industries that made this country rich are packing their bags for Texas or China. But the most important thing is what the rest of the world is learning from this. Developing nations like India and Vietnam are looking at Germany right now and saying, yeah, we're definitely not doing that. They are building nuclear. They are building coal. They are prioritizing reliability and affordability over pure ideology. Germany wanted to be a role model for the world, and in a way, they succeeded. They became the perfect example of what not to do. They showed us that you cannot run a modern industrial superpower on intermittent weather-dependent energy alone, at least not without a massive, reliable backup. And if you destroy your clean backup, like nuclear, before your new technology is ready, you don't reach the other side of the bridge. You fall off the cliff. Energy policy cannot be built on wishful thinking. It requires physics, math, and cold, hard economics. If you let ideology drive the bus, don't be surprised when you drive it into a wall. Germany spent $500 billion to learn this lesson. Hopefully, the rest of us can learn it for free. Thanks for watching. If you found this deep dive valuable, hit that like button and tell me in the comments, is it too late for Germany to restart its reactors, or is the damage permanent? I read every comment. I'll see you in the next one.